Welcome, everyone. This is Lauren Bailey, the founder of Factor 8 and Girls Club. We've got every perspective, right? The person who's looking for talent, the person who's been doing it for years, large company, small company, HR, and a professional recruiter. Somebody who is team-oriented, and I love it. Beall gave us an example of take 'em bowling, and it's an individual sport, but are they getting the team hyped up? Do they care about how everybody's doing? And Mark's point on paper is that they're a person committed to making it work, not job hopping. Folks, if you are interested in getting into leadership, realize that you don't have to wait for the title, right? You're going to manage with influence, not with authority. Hopefully these are some really, really great tips of actions you can take today, some skills you can start to brush up on today, and for my leaders out there already, some ways that you can recognize when someone's ready. So let's start by having our all-star cast introduce themselves. Beall, will you start, please?
Sure. Great to be here, Lauren. Beall, CEO, Connect and Sell.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Laura.
Hi. Thank you so much for the invite today. I am Laura Tasker. I'm Senior Manager, HR Business Partner for Verizon Connect. And we are a small unit of Verizon, but we do software as a service.
Yes, you do, and a really cool tool. In fact, let's go backwards for a second. Chris, for like the 5 people on earth who don't know, what is Connect and Sell?
Yeah, Connect and Sell lets salespeople push a button and talk to somebody on their list in about 3 minutes. So they go from talking to 3 or 4 people a day to having 30 or 40 conversations a day. Which
nobody in phone sales needs. So sorry about the
who would want that?
Yeah, awesome. All right, Rebecca, your turn. Who's, by the way, joining us in the middle of the night. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Becca Holland. I'm the Senior Manager of Inside Sales at Gong.io. And what Gong does, at a high level, we help sales teams drive revenue by enabling them to have better sales conversations.
Yes, there's recording, there's AI, there's marketing. Listen, at Factor 8, we are all about sales training, and you have to record your calls, everybody. That's like step 1. So I'm a big Gong fan. And Becca, you run how many reps on your team?
So I have 9 currently, and we're growing the team to probably about 16 by the end of the year.
Fantastic. So this is right up your alley. All right, Mark, tell us about you.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be with you guys today. My name is Marc Gonyea. I'm a co-founder and managing director of a company called Memory Blue.
And what does Memory Blue do?
We're an outsourced inside sales company. So we run outsourced demand generation campaigns, primarily through phone and email, for usually emerging high-tech companies, but we work with some of the larger companies in the universe too.
And Memory Blue has a really cool model, right? Where we don't keep reps forever. Most of us struggle trying to keep reps forever. And you've just said, I build it in, man. We're going to train them. And then when you outsource to us, you're going to take them with you, right?
Yeah. So we have about 120 SDRs currently on staff now who are Memory Blue SDR employees. And they work on technology companies' outbound campaigns. But the technology firms, if they like, they don't have to. It's part of these service models. They can convert them to come on board as employees of the client of their own.
Yeah, it's a really cool culture and a really cool model. In fact, you recently won an AAISP award for your culture, didn't you?
I did. We got Best Culture 2018. It was awesome. It was like one of the highlights of my professional career. It was great. Or actually life.
Yeah, I think we might be overselling it a tiny bit, but that's all right. We got to get you.
That was very gratifying. That's cool. Culture's important.
You've earned that. We hear great things. All right, you cannot see her, which is a pity because she's absolutely lovely. Joining us, going through security at the airport today, Jamie Crosbie. Tell us about you.
Lauren, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I'm Jamie Crosbie, the founder and CEO of Proactivate. We are a sales talent acquisition firm specializing in areas that support revenue generation. So sales leadership, marketing, sales operations, service, anything really that supports revenue generation. And prior to that was VP of sales at Career Builder and had a team of 80 plus salespeople. So there's perspective from both of those backgrounds that I look forward to sharing today.
And I just love this. We've got every perspective, right? The person who's looking for talent, the person who's been doing it for years, large company, small company, HR, and a professional recruiter, right? So we're going to nail this, you guys. Here we go. I'm going to start off with the very first question. How do you identify future sales leaders? So we're looking at that rep level. How do you decide who gets plucked out and encouraged into that management level role? I can tell Chris has an answer.
It's whoever speaks first.
Exactly. This is deathmatch, folks. Let's not be polite. Let's get in here.
Well, to me, it's the same process you use when identifying any future leaders, sales leaders, or any other leaders. I always look for three things. I want folks who are curious, and not just about what they're doing, but about business broadly and about people. If they're not curious about people, it's going to be hard to be a sales leader. I want people who are coachable but not moldable. That it's folks who can objectively work on their own behavior when it's being coached, but they stand back from that a little bit and they do not have an inclination to change who they are. So there are some people in the world who kind of like to suck up and say, I'm going to be somebody new.
Yeah.
That's not interesting, but they got to be coachable. And then there's a weird feature, and it's hard to find, which is they're team-oriented in non-team sports. So if you take a group of people bowling, for instance, somebody's going to try to help everybody else, but somebody is also not just going to help, but their presence, the way they are, is going to cause everybody to be better.
Yeah. Oh my God, you really thought about this.
It's the most important thing in
wants
business.
to answer, I'll completely understand, because those are three really cool qualities. Top that, panel, huh?
I'll never look at bowling the same.
Right? But I really love that answer, because you've got to have somebody who wants to nurture. And let's be honest, sales isn't a team sport, but you're looking for that person to encourage the strike once again. Right?
Well, and Lauren, I would just, this is Jamie, I would add to that, because I think those are all remarkable and important. And within that, the curiosity, just people who are learners that want to continue to develop themselves, because then they will see in other people opportunities to change the trajectory of their success. So for sales leaders, you want people who truly look at a team and are able to, they can't motivate people, but they can impact and change the trajectory of their success by helping them continue to learn and develop. So they themselves have to want to learn and develop, and as well, they have to want to serve others. So the mistake we often make is we think, this great sales performer is going to be this great sales leader. Well, oftentimes our top performers are very self-focused, and so they're not always great leaders. So it's really the person who wants to learn and develop and who wants to serve others, because in that way they will ultimately help them learn and develop and change their success to a level of which they didn't know they could accomplish.
Love it. Really good additions. Who else has something to add?
I could bring in here. So they're the first two attributes that I'm looking for. I look for 5 in general. The first one is that they're good at the baseline job, so a really good performer. Second, they're coachable, like Chris mentioned, that they're really invested in coaching and they really like that and they're energized by it. But the back 3 that I pay attention to are, number 1, someone who's really process driven, someone who thinks about what they do while they're doing it. But then the 4th one, it needs to be a unique pairing of they are reality driven and they're interested in how that process looks like on the front lines. So I've seen a lot of scenarios where someone's really process oriented but doesn't want to look at what it looks like on the floor, which doesn't help anyone. And then someone who doesn't think about what they do, but are really in the day-to-day. Either one of those scenarios aren't a great leader to me. But
a combination.
Yeah, kind of a combination. But the 5th one that, I do have a little anecdote, over here at Gong. The 5th attribute I'm looking for is someone who is really data driven and has no authorship pride. So there's going to be a lot of decisions that I have made that aren't the best, or decisions that are really great. And I have to be very objective in looking at the data and saying, is this a decision that really made sense for my team now? And is it a decision that's going to hold some bandwidth for the next years to come? So being able to say, okay, this is a good idea, and hold an open hand with ideas, I think is super important, just to kind of check your ego at the door and be very driven for the success of the team, not my own pride.
Well, you know, a couple things I love about what you said, Becca, is that, first of all, I think a lot of people listening to this will be jealous, right? Because I think at Gong, because of your incredible tool, you've got data for everything. Like, you help people do the job that you manage people doing with the data of your, right? So you can be look at it and like, I think we should have longer intros. Let's look at the data and see, right? So I think that's neat. But the other thing you said without saying is that you like somebody who has a present and a future focus.
Yes.
It's not just a gut, we need to change something for today, but I have the wherewithal to think about what that's going to mean going forward. So neat additions. Thank you. Mark, how about you? Anything that hasn't been said? You do a lot of this.
I don't think I have anything that hasn't been said that may not be covered in another topic that we hit on. So I'll save it.
Good. Laura, how about from the HR perspective? Anything we haven't touched on here?
The only thing that I would add is that I think, and this is a tweak on what some folks have already said, but we really look for people who take a vested interest not only in the success of others, but also the success of the team. And I think sometimes that is a piece that will sort of help someone to stand out, that this is a person who might be able to lead a team because they seem to be very interested in the overall success of the team and how they can impact it.
What's neat about that distinction is, you know, we talked about being team oriented, right? But what you said gives some clarity about exactly what to look for, right? So if you're on the front lines and you've been tasked with trying to identify talent, right? We've got to translate this a little bit. Like, how do you see curiosity and a desire to learn? Right. So we want to look for evidence of that. Somebody who's celebrating the team number and success is very quickly evident. We can see that, right? It's recognizable. I want to call out one other thing I really loved and ask this to the group. Becca, I think it was you who said, I'm looking for somebody who's a solid performer in the job, right? Let's not put them in charge if they haven't been able to take flight and get off the ground as a rep. But if you were to categorize performance as A, B, C, D performers, which one are you looking for in your organization?
I mean, I would say that personally, I'm looking for an A or a B player because I haven't seen, you know, and I know the argument of like not all great performers are leaders, but I want us to be careful that some great performers are great leaders as well. And so if best case scenario, if I have someone who doesn't know how to perform or doesn't know how to sell or doesn't know how to speak to C-level in a buttoned up way, best case scenario, I'm having them emulate that behavior onto the rest of their team, and suddenly I have a team of C players. So I do hold that as one of the pillars of what I'm looking for, because I want to know that they know how to do the job, and I think that warrants a lot of respect among their team when they know that they can, that the leader can outbook the team if given, you know, apples to apples in the same situation.
You certainly come in with credibility, right? Jamie, I think you were going to say something there.
Well, I was just going to say, yes, absolutely. The leader has to be able to go in the field and help reps close deals and have credibility to do so, to be able to sell alongside or to bring another perspective to a client. Initially, when you ask the question, you know, my first instinct is B player, because they're, you know, they're good, but they're, you know, a lot of A players don't necessarily translate, but they really do have to be people who know the formula for success. They've done the metrics for success themselves. They have a clear sales process, and they have credibility with the team. So I really do completely agree that an A or a B, they can't be beyond that, because they have to be an example for sales. And the power of two in the field, to have, you know, a sales leader who can lead by example and show a new rep how to go close a deal.
Good feedback. I have to tell you, my initial reaction is usually a B player as well. Not because I don't want A players, but in my experience, your superstars are the artists. They tend to be less process driven. It's not a science. They can't teach it. And they're so competitive and so me focused that they tend to sort of nudge the guy out of the way, grab the headset and close the call instead of coaching it and helping teach others.
True.
Anybody else have input on that before I go to our next question? All right.
To me, it's a negative in a way. If you have D players on your team, you're not much of a leader if you're keeping them. And keeping them in a sales role, maybe they belong in another role. C players are interesting because if they're very junior and they're moving up, then you're not going to promote them anyway because you're waiting. And if they're permanent C players, they shouldn't be on a sales team anyway. So
they're probably not going forward. Yep. Really good input. All right. So this is a bit of a follow-up. Can you help us with some specific clues? Right. We've got a great list of 10 attributes that we're looking for, but what are day-to-day clues that you look for in their performance on the job or behavior on the job that makes you say, oh yeah. So be specific, something I could observe or somebody could write down that they're looking for in this next week to identify some bench strength.
Lauren, before I go into security in a moment, I would like to just throw in something, and then I'll be out of security. But I would say, do the current team members come to that person and ask questions, and they're willing to help? So that would be one just small thing that you could see that's tangible. Obviously, they have a clear formula for success. They're hitting the requirements in terms of activity and results that it takes to win themselves. But do they have respect among their peers where people come to them and ask questions and they're seen as a credible source? Good. And are they asking for feedback themselves on how to be better?
Oh, and there's your coachability. Nice. Jamie, one more before you put your phone down on the conveyor belt. And that is, what makes them jump off paper to you, right? You've got that recruiter perspective. We're talking about identifying on the floor. How do you identify in a resume or a LinkedIn profile?
Well, okay. So I would say a couple of things. One, that they are results driven on their resume or on their LinkedIn profile. So they are listing, achievements and things like that. Because even if, they're not a leader yet, but they're a sales performer, a sharp person knows to do that. And you want a sharp person who's a leader. I honestly would say that I have more things that turn me off than turn me on paper, because I think paper is just paper. And so it takes a lot more than that. So the turnoffs are people who don't have action-oriented resumes that talk about results, or they just have really bad form, like they have typos, they're not consistent in the way they're communicating, or tense, or just any of those little things that show the person is not sharp enough to put their best foot forward on something that's so important is a turn off. So
that's a good one. Thank you for that. We'll pick you up on the other side. So Marc, talk to us about what you ask your team to observe, or what you see on the floor that makes you say, I've got myself a future leader there.
It's interesting because we have people who it's tough to be a frontline manager, I think, for so many different reasons. And I think what you want to look for, I look for the nuance, like the finer nuance as to how they relate with others and how they communicate with others. Because you can have a lot of good sales professionals, even early stage people in their career who are just ruthlessly effective at what they do, but they're kind of a single track mind. And in many ways, their level of self-awareness isn't as high as I think it needs to be an effective manager or a leader. And I think it'll come, but I think sometimes people confuse the mistake of a sales professional as something that will automatically translate into sales leadership. So I look for someone who's maybe a little more humble than they might need to be, because I think with humility comes leadership. And I think people who have a commitment to a cause kind of other than oneself. And you can see that even in early stage people. I see that with a lot of our clients. We work with a lot of tech companies, and you look at somebody's LinkedIn and they're a journey person, sales professional, either as a manager or as an individual contributor. And you start to wonder, is this person, they've had 7 jobs in 5 years or 6 years, or 6 jobs in 8 years. And is that because really they ran into that many bad firms, or are they just really committed to themselves and not really? It takes some patience and some time. So
that's a great one. Yes. Yeah. I like also how you've talked about seeing that they're dedicated to other causes. That brings me to what you said, Chris, earlier about this is somebody who's curious about the world and willing to be coached, but not change themselves. Like you're a whole person, not just a sales rep is kind of what I was hearing from some of what Marc said. Anybody else, Chris or Laura or Becca, what do you want to add to things that you observe that are clues?
Yeah, so I know that one of the things that we look for is people who kind of rise as a leader and assume leadership when there either is a void of such or just in normal, team meetings or in a situation where they see the big picture and not just see how it relates to them. So they demonstrate a bigger global view of things. And I also think that people who hold themselves accountable. I mean, in all of the organizations, there's a level of accountability, but people who go above and beyond that and find ways to hold themselves even personally more accountable and sort of have great mechanisms in place for their own sales disciplines, and they ensure that they stick with them, because that's a really tough thing to do, I think.
Good. You guys, as I'm writing all these down, I'm like forming interview questions and observations in my head. This is great. Thank you for that. I really love how you were talking about how you can observe in meetings. Who's going to step up and maybe lead a part of a meeting? Who's going to step up and take an action item if something needs to be delegated? Who's the first to say, yeah, you're right, boss. You asked everybody to leave XYZ voicemail and I effed that up and I own it. And you can see those things. Good. Chris and Becca, anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I look for, I would say it's really interesting because you get to know your quote unquote kids really well whenever you see their attributes in the day to day. So, I'm very careful to, someone asking to become a manager or for more responsibility after a 3-month review or after a 6-month review is a lot different scenario to me than someone who has almost already to a degree assumed the role in the fabric that it's made of, but isn't looking for the title. That's not chief importance for them. So it's someone that's really, benevolent from my perspective by nature, someone who really, I like what Marc said, is just a really, big fan of helping others in their day to day, because it makes a really effective leader in the end. And so I think it's really easy, over time, because people surface their own attributes for you. So it makes the conversation a lot more logical or less logical about moving into management whenever you see them over a period of time.
Yes, but to translate, one of the things I hear not to do from you, Becca, is don't be asking me about a promotion in your first 6-9 months on the job.
Yeah.
Like get it done, focus on the job at hand, and be a leader without the title.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's really important to find someone who will just do the thing, like execute really well and not worry about all these 6 steps. There's been times in my own career where my eye was on a branch a little bit further than I could reach, and the branch that I was holding on to suffered because of it. So I think it's really important to be really all in on executing where you're currently at. And then, letting the future kind of, to a degree, handle itself.
It's a really good point. And what a great test that's out there as well, right? If you've got somebody who is nailing it and getting the job done and you're wanting to test how they do, to give small stretch assignments, delegating tasks, leading parts of team meetings, helping others, be the go-to person, a coach, any of those are great little assignments. And let's see, does the branch of the sales job they're holding on to suffer as they're reaching for this leader branch? That's such a great picture you painted. Chris, anything you want to add to the conversation there?
Yeah, one more. In the world of leadership, I found that it's hard to find out what somebody is like when times are good, and it's easy when times are bad.
Ooh.
And future leaders have a particular behavior pattern in sales and everywhere else, which is they seek advice for whatever's going wrong, and then they go and apply it. And the non-future leaders, the future non-leaders, tend to seek help and let somebody else do it, or they don't ask at all. There's sort of 3 things you can do, and leaders do the rare one. This is go and learn something and then apply it.
Oh my gosh, that's good. I just had a few things, like a few boom reality bombs blow up for myself and my team. That was deep, Chris Beall. You can just mic drop and be done for the rest of the webinar.
Lauren, may I add one thought to that?
Yeah,
that is
Jamie.
so good. That is so good. Okay, so that just made me think, just to add to that, that leaders live in the solutions room, not the situation room. So they're not talking about the problems or spending time sitting there talking about all of the reasons why not. But if there's a reason why not, they're coming up with solutions.
Exactly.
So you see them in the solutions room, not in the situation room, so to speak.
Yeah, I think you're being kind in calling it a situation room, because I think normally it's the bitch and moan room, right?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, I have a permanent seat in the bitch and moan room, and leaders absolutely find that other room. It's my pet peeve. Come to me with all the reasons it won't work.
Exactly.
Now what? What do you suggest? Yeah, good one. Okay, you guys, I want to move on and talk now for just a second about any horror stories. Has anybody done it wrong and can share what not to do or what not to look for because of their experience?
Well, I'm the oldest person here, so I got a bunch.
Pick your worst.
The dumbest thing I ever did was to promote somebody who, it turned out, believed that other people should pay attention, it was a him, to his mood. And he would announce what his mood was at the beginning of the day and expect everyone to adapt to it.
Oh, that's so good. I have to tell you, it reminds me of this guy I used to sit next to. It was my first job as an inside sales manager at Insight. So I'm like barely 22, and I used to, I had fake reading glasses so I'd look older. And this asshole that sat across from me literally had a tip jar. And if you wanted his help or you wanted him to release an order or you had to pay him for him to do his job.
Wow, truly
It's the same sort of idea, right? Like, it's all about me. Please revolve around me instead of being the servant leader. It's a good one, Chris. All right, anybody else?
You know, we promoted someone. This was a little while ago, so when the economy wasn't as strong as it was, but it sits with me. It resonates with me the most because it was a mistake. The only time we promoted someone into a manager role who the economy went a little south, and this person wasn't well equipped to run their team. I'll keep it gender neutral. Run their team in a way that would have been profitable for the company. So we're a professional services firm. So we need people to bring in money for the company to be profitable, to run the business effectively. And we promoted this person too early, and there was more pressure on her than there should have been because I promoted her too early, and she ended up exiting the company, and we had to exit her because her team was the lowest performing team, and it was only because we promoted her too early.
Yeah, yep.
I made that mistake as well. So just the simple fact that we promoted somebody too early, then the economy went south, and it wasn't through no fault of her own. And she ended up doing great. She's still in the business. She's doing exceptionally well, so on and so forth. I mean, she was an A player, but me not recognizing that she wasn't ready to be promoted came back to me having to have that exit conversation with her, many months down the road. Actually, not that many months down the road. So
yeah.
That's a big bummer. So now we're extremely careful in terms of, is this person truly ready, and why are they ready? And if these scenarios were to happen, how effective would they be?
That's good. Like Chris said, you really see someone's true colors in the worst of times, not the best of times. And the other thing I like about that is just some situational awareness. So there's a lot of startups out there that are just now trying to get somebody in charge of sales. Well, let's be honest. In that situation, the sales manager is going to report to the president / CEO / I'm outselling the company / chief bottle washer / in charge of marketing. So that person isn't going to get much time, right? So you need somebody who's a little further in their career. Sometimes you can afford to get somebody early on, and sometimes we need to, even if it means hiring in from the outside, and maybe Jamie can talk about some of that. But you got to know when you need what level of leader. Anybody else have a horror story for us?
I would say that to Mark's point about the situation that he described, I come from companies that are very high growth, And because of that, we are promoting people very quickly and oftentimes into roles that they're not quite ready for. So we've done it more than once, Mark, I would say. And I think that the fundamental issue with that is that we, you know, I always talk with people when they come, when they want some career advice. I always say, you know, when you, the time to start preparing for the next job you want is not when the job is posted. So it's the same thing, you know, the time to start preparing leaders is not when you need them. It's long before you need them.
Right.
You know, hence this whole idea about building a bench.
Right. Good.
Absolutely.
Jamie, let's have you share that with us a little bit. Talk to me about the cost, right? As a recruiter, I know that you're familiar with some of this. Like, what's it cost when you're bringing somebody in from the outside, or what's it cost when you make a bad decision?
Well, absolutely. I mean, so if you look at just, you know, the cost of a bad decision, average cost of turnover, which would be, you know, indicative of a bad decision, is 150% of someone's annual compensation.
Wow.
And so, I mean, that, you know, a bad hire in sales can cost a lot of money. And then you have to also consider the opportunity cost, right, of the territory that now is not filled, the sales opportunity that's being missed. And also, you know, just the overall, the variance of production between a top performer and a poor performer is 67%. So a poor performer definitely impacts the overall productivity of the sales organization and illustrates that you're willing to accept mediocrity. So the message that it sends is costly as well for the entire organization. And you know, you also have to consider market share and the leader's time and, you know, time to train and just all the hours of sourcing talent and things like that. And then from a recruiting perspective, obviously it's, you know, traditional recruiters, and our model is different, but traditional recruiters, just an average fee to hire a salesperson is around $15,000, $20,000. That's not even, you know, a leader or anything like that. So it's definitely extremely costly to find talent, and, you know, certainly to lose talent as well.
Especially when that talent you're losing is a high performing rep, right?
Absolutely.
That's rough because we're losing their performance. The team's going down. I saw a stat recently, Jamie, maybe it was from you. And, you know, FYI, I will make up this number that's about to come. But it was like up to like a 10% drop in performance when a top rep is put in charge of their team. And that's even, it's not even saying the rep's doing a bad job.
Right.
Like,
well, it's just that they're in charge of a lot of revenue, right? And so now it's missing. Yeah.
Bingo. So let's talk about some of those skill gaps and what we've seen done or what we're doing in our own organizations to fill some of those gaps. So it's a two-part question. The first part is, and we can go round robin on that first if you'd like. What are the biggest gaps you see when you either promote a rep up into manager or when you bring a manager in from the outside? And by the way, that's a different way of asking this exact same question. What could people be working on right now to fill some of those gaps and prepare for a role in management? Becca.
Well, I think go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. I could just see her face. Like she took a breath. She was ready.
I triggered the gun, cocked the gun. So I definitely think something that lies at the fulcrum of good management is the cognizance of that coaching someone and growing someone and nurturing someone is a day-to-day process, and it's not something you can do overnight. So, I mean, Gong is certainly, you know, a tool for coaching. And I've seen a lot of times where, you know, you can bring in some kind of outsource, you know, sales training and, okay, we're going to throw these guys in Sandler, we're going to do Medic and Spin and Challenger, you know, and I kind of like let the kids go off to camp for a day. And then I'm wondering why they can't execute the training that they were, you know, the expensive training that we put into them. And so I'd say as far as a skill gap, I think that there's for first-time managers and frontline managers, there just needs to be an awareness that management isn't just making sure, like seeing if someone's hitting quota and if they're not, you know, yelling at them for doing it. But it's more so learning what their gaps are and what their specific strengths and weaknesses are, and as far as the training proclivity, and learning how to get them to take one step forward at a time, and not looking for these training programs.
Well, I think that's great. And that proclivity towards coaching and developing others, we talked about already as sort of an attribute, but it is also definitely a skill. And in fact, I think it was CSO Insights that recently ranked sales managers' skills, right? What are most sales managers great at and what are they worst at? And the very bottom of the stack, call coaching.
Yeah.
So they need some help in filling that skill gap. That's a great one. Jamie, you were on deck to answer one too.
So I just think if in the spirit of what can we do now to prepare for leadership, I do think that we can begin taking performers that we believe could ultimately become leaders and providing some leadership development to them. I think there's a lot of assumptions we make that they're ready based on performance in sales. And it is true, we've all discussed things that are important for them to illustrate in that capacity. However, what we're often missing is the leadership development. So any types of, I would suggest encouraging them to be reading, books on sales leadership, to be looking for a mentor in the area of sales leadership. I would suggest the leader that's currently in place, having them run a development for the team or run a sales meeting, be in on another one-on-one and see if they could lead that one-on-one with the sales team member. So begin to do some simulations to prepare them and to expose them to the opportunity, but as well to see them in action.
Fantastic advice. Things that people can take action on right now. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I see something that's a gap. I think we all have it, but I think it's particularly crucial in sales management, is a lack of appreciation for the different ways different people work on the inside. Mm-hmm. What is different about people? I think it's very common for high performers to see other people as sort of copies of themselves. And the story they tell is always the story about how they did something, or the story about how they were on the other side of it and had it done to them.
Yes.
And getting past that fairly young person's point of view, which is, it's safe for me to believe that everybody's a copy of me, and so I may as well deal with the ones that, that works out for, and ignore everybody else. It doesn't work it doesn't work in leadership, and it doesn't work in sales management at all.
I don't know if the savvy watcher and listener could note this, but as Chris talked about trying to hire a copy of yourself, everybody head nodded on the webinar right now, because we've all seen it. Maybe some of us have even done it. But it is a young manager's mistake. Like I was a top rep, so I just need to find more of me. And then, by the way, while I'm coaching, no, here's how you do it. Like, you're going to look like me, talk like me, sound like me, and sell like me is a critical mistake. Good one. Anyone else? Mark or Laura, anything to add here? What are those key skills that people can be working on now to fill the common gaps?
This is kind of a mistake I see, but this is why we've worked with Factor 8 to kind of fill this gap within our own company. You're welcome. Was the performance management side of the business. It's very, very, you have to be vigilant as heck to be an effective sales manager, I believe. And I think it's most people's tendency to avoid that uncomfortable and natural conversation around someone's performance. And I'm not talking about the performance when you're putting someone on PIP, which, I go to lots of industry events, and sometimes those events remind me of the Lego movie. Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of the team. Everything is awesome. Like, there's nothing to be seen here. And especially in this economy, the unemployment's so low, it's hard to get strong people, and you don't want to lose good people. But therefore, that's kind of an excuse not to have those conversations that lead up to a PIP conversation. And those are the uncomfortable ones. That's when you're living in, as a leader, are you respected or you liked? And, I want my leaders living in a penthouse on Respect Avenue and not in a small studio in Friendship Alley. And I don't know how hard that is it's hard to develop that before you're actually in the chair. But that's something that you need, I think it leads to giving people opportunities to fail maybe, or to be put in uncomfortable conversations where they can learn from those accordingly, because that's what being a leader is about a lot of times, unfortunately.
Well, Mark,
and I hate to be the
and let me just tie it together with something that Chris and Jamie were talking about, is when you give folks an opportunity, and it doesn't have to be in a performance one-on-one, because that can be tricky to have a third party in, but let's do a call coaching. You're using your Gong tool, you're listening to some calls, and a rep can run that. And is the rep always Lego movie, or is the rep pointing out areas for improvement, and how do they do? Are they comfortable or uncomfortable in that? Do you know where else they could do that? In a setting as interviewing, right? Are they able to push back? Are they able to come back to you and say, not so much, and these are the reasons why? Or is it everything is awesome? And I think that that's a great opportunity for us to coach that along the way, because be clear, folks, we do have to develop them before it's time, right? The reason you identify a bench is so that you can start to get them in development, so that you don't have that big dip and you don't lose that high performer by promoting them too soon before they're ready. Laura, I want to give you a chance too. Anything you want to add to that?
The things that I might add there is, I think that a lot of new managers especially fall into the more telling, less listening mode. And anything that we can do, that we can observe them in, or put them in situations where, I think the interview, to your point, Lauren, is a great opportunity to see how well they are able to ask questions and to listen and to facilitate, and meetings are also a great place to put them into that situation. It just gives you that idea of, or it gives you that indication as to whether or not they're comfortable in that, versus just let me tell you what to do.
Yeah, we call that speaking coach. Right? Can they manage in questions? And that it's tough to do. So we're near the end of our time. I just want to open it up for any last advice to leaders building a bench, managers identifying talent, and reps hoping to be the talent that gets identified.
Lauren, one thought I would add is just the importance of truly building a bench. Part of our whole philosophy at ProActivate is to have a bench of talent that mirrors that of your top performer. So if you lost a top performer unexpectedly, you would know who your next person was that was going to be able to be added to your team. So I remember at Career Builder, I had 10 area sales managers across the country, and part of their job every Friday was to have at least 2 to 3 interviews of talent, so that they literally could tell me, here are the next 3 people I would hire. And that's how we protect our revenue as leaders, is to consistently have a bench of talent. And that's part of our philosophy and what we help our clients do. But most importantly, we want to do that on the sales side as well as the leadership side. We want to know who we're investing in, who will be our up and coming leaders, or areas that we have on our team where we have key players that we may need to replace, or just where a top performer might get promoted. We've got to be prepared with a bench of talent.
Good.
That is critical. That's true leadership. It's proactive versus reactive.
And hence your company name, right? So I did that as well. In my days in the corporate world, we had to identify our replacement. So every year, as part of our leadership annual review, we gave 1 to 3 names. And that's the ability for our boss to hold us accountable to what are you doing to developing that person. So I'll tell you as well that something we encourage a lot at Factor 8 when we get hired to do sales manager training is identifying and pulling bench into that training. Send them to training with your managers. Get them logins to
absolutely
as well, if that's your solution. Whatever it is, and it's not just the training that they get, but the camaraderie with the current managers and what they'll learn from that group. That's really step 2 after you identify the bench. Anyone else?
I would just say, in identifying the bench, one thing that I have found to be really powerful is getting different perspectives. So not just you being the only person who's in the interview process or who is identifying talent, get the perspective of other leaders that you respect, so that you get a different view on people and you're not just hiring in your own likeness.
So smart, especially for frontline managers, right? Until you've been hiring for 3 to 5 years, get a second pair of eyes. I made some big mistakes. I love it.
I wanted to bring in on that, because I think that's for frontline managers, because clearly that's my perspective. I think hiring the right people and the importance of hiring is something that is often overlooked in regards to building a bench.
Oh, yeah.
So I would say, like, if I don't have a bench, I either, in regards to like performance plans and, oh, this person isn't, able to meet quota, let's put them on a performance plan. From my perspective, I either hired the wrong person or I hired the right person and I'm not coaching them effectively to get them up to speed. So either case, having the accountability and the onus to say that this is on me in like either case scenario. But in the positive side of that being, you want to hire people who are going to challenge you, hire people who are smarter than you, a lot of times, which can be intimidating and push you as a leader. But just hire with the view of building a bench. In the SD program, we obviously have to do it relatively quickly because the life cycle is pretty short for us.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't want to stay in it for forever. So I think the importance of hiring is paramount whenever thinking about building a bench and who are my future leaders.
It's a really good point. Let not just hire for the current job, but for the next role. Mark and Chris, any last words?
I think it's brilliant. Yeah, I love hiring people who've been leaders in other walks of life.
Diversity.
Yes, I mean, leadership is leadership. Yeah. And folks who have been leaders, who've stepped up into difficult situations and led, and they don't have to even be leaders out of sales. Sales is more teachable than leadership.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that. And Mark, we interrupted you. You had something great to say there, too.
I was going to let Chris go first because I was age before beauty.
You went on all fronts.
I'm right. Like, it looked really important, Mark. What was it? Oh, I'm just ripping on Chris Beall.
No, I'm having fun. I have two things to add. I have one thing to add and a question. I also think as a sales manager or a leader, if you're actively thinking about developing your bench, you're actively contingency planning because things never turn out as the way you like them to do. And if you start to really consider the people who aren't ready to, they still need more developing, or they need to, they're just not ready yet, and you have someone you think is ready, but all of a sudden that person isn't ready, or they leave the firm, or that position isn't available. The fact you've been actively working a process to develop, A, B, C, and D, not that they're any better quality than others, that gets you thinking a little differently, and you're going to be ready for those things that aren't happening. So yeah, your company and your firm will benefit from you having this bench, but you'll also be a better leader because you're going to anticipate some of these things because you're thinking a little more thoroughly. And I wanted to know what are those behind? Are those bricks on you behind the wall there?
Yeah.
What are those?
Yeah. And then I got my headsets hung up here. What does it look like?
No, I'm sorry. I was curious about that.
Yeah. Well, naturally. Yeah. They're not real bricks though. They're brick fronts.
Got it. Like a facade.
Yeah, I totally decimated this office adding those, but I like it. I like the feel of it. Thanks for that. Was really important that we wrap with that. So
all of us need work. We all need work.
I love it. You guys, I just want to say thank you. Jamie, did you have a chance for last words? You may be boarding already, but I want to make sure.
No, I think I started with the last words. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. No, I feel great about it. The only thing I would add to that is just when we're, interviewing or hiring for the leadership, to definitely put them in scenarios that we can observe that are true, simulations of things they would be doing as part of the hiring process, not just to see if they might be interested.
Really important. Thank you. You guys, this has been incredible. It's a treasure trove of information. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the thousands of people who are going to view this over time. You just really, really solid stuff. I just want to say thank you one more time to our incredible panel. Chris from Connect and Sell, Mark from Memory Blue, Laura from Verizon, Becca from Gong, and Jamie from Proactivate. And again, I'm Lauren with Factor 8. I want to summarize some of the key points for you and let you know that we have a new bench building program right here called GirlsClub. As you're out identifying young talent, I encourage you to extend a special hand to the women on your team, the firecracker young sales reps that you think might make great sales managers. At Factor 8, we do sales manager training, but now we do something even more special for those young women looking to get into sales management. It's a program called GirlsClub. It's built on the foundation of Factor 8 sales management training. How do you run a one-on-one? How to be a good call coach, giving performance feedback, and more. There's 10 to 15 classes in the program. But in addition, we create this community of support in trying to fix the problem that we don't have enough women in sales leadership. Each woman gets their own mentor from another company, someone with at least 10 years experience in sales management, personally guiding them on their journey into sales management. They also get live webinars, reading lists, activities, quizzes. It's a jam-packed program, and it's 9 months long. It takes them literally from identification in a rep role, a willingness to learn more, all the way through, so that by the end, and possibly even before, these reps are ready to lead a high-performing team. So we're really excited about it. Our first program launches September 5th. If you're watching this between then and now, sign up anyway to get on the mailing list and continue to learn more. You'll hear how the girls are doing in their first journey, and have an opportunity to sign up for future programs. The URL is www.wearegirlsclub.com. wearegirlsclub.com. Learn more about this really exciting bench building program. Folks, if you are interested in getting into leadership, realize that you don't have to wait for the title, right? You're going to manage with influence, not with authority. Hopefully these are some really, really great tips of actions you can take today, some skills you can start to brush up on today, and for my leaders out there already, some ways that you can recognize when someone's ready. So thanks so much for joining us. Feel free to email me directly with comments and questions, or if you want to learn more about Girls Club. I'm Lauren Bailey. I'm at lb@factor8.com. Thank you.